With the 39th pick in the 2013 NFL Draft, the New York Jets select Geno Smith.
Although Geno Smith was drafted in the second round, he was slated to be the next franchise quarterback of the New York Jets, as Mark Sanchez's days with the team were looking numbered and he was turning out to be a bust. Well, Geno Smith didn't work out either, and after his first 2 seasons, he spent the next 6 as a backup. He was slated to be a full-time starter for the first time since 2014, going into the 2022 season, in what was supposed to be the beginning of a rebuild for the Seattle Seahawks, as they moved on from their longtime franchise quarterback Russell Wilson. However, Geno Smith had a career year leading the Seahawks to the playoffs, led the league in completion percentage, threw for over 4,000 yards and 30 touchdowns while throwing just 11 interceptions, and made his first Pro Bowl at the age of 32. How did he do this? I think this was the first time in his career where he was actually put in the best position to succeed, and until this season, he was given up on too quickly. Even though the 49ers just eliminated the Seahawks, I do think Geno Smith's comeback is still worth talking about.
They wrote me off. I ain't right back, though. That's the problem. I ain't right back. Let's go.
He was also involved in a bizarre incident we'll get to later, which definitely didn't help him. So let's take a deep dive at his career and how he got to become one of the best underdog and redemption stories in recent memory. So before we continue, if you could please take a moment to consider liking the video to support the grind, consider subscribing and turning on notifications to join the team for the new year. Love to have you as part of the team. So let's continue. Before Geno Smith played 4 seasons at West Virginia, let's take it back to what Travis Kelce had to say about him when he first saw Geno Smith throw a football in high school.
I've seen Geno sling it around since we were in high school, man. He doesn't even know this. I guarantee he doesn't know this. But when we both went on a recruiting visit to West Virginia, and he was just dotting it, and the way the ball was coming out his hand was like...
You were at a recruitment camp with Geno at West Virginia?
At West Virginia as a quarterback, and I thought I was going to go there and Rich Rod was going to offer me a scholarship because of what he saw in that 7-on-7 of me. I walked out of there empty-handed, and Geno Smith walked out of there with an offer to West Virginia. But I just remember seeing him throw the ball, and I was just sitting on the sideline like, man, I ain't got that. I could throw it a little bit, but that ball ain't flying out of my hand like that, man.
Geno Smith was a 4-star recruit according to Scout and Rivals. By his senior season, he threw for 42 touchdown passes while only throwing 6 interceptions and had a QB rating of nearly 164. He was named National Offensive Player of the Week twice as a senior, and Big 12 Offensive Player of the Week 3 times. This included a game against Baylor where Geno Smith threw for 656 yards and 8 touchdowns, leading the Mountaineers to a 70-63 win. Geno Smith was invited to the NFL Scouting Combine, and scouts were impressed by his athleticism and arm strength, but thought he needs to improve with his ball placement. Although he was a second-round pick, he was actually expected to be a first-round pick and did attend the draft the night of the first round, but E.J. Manuel happened to be the only quarterback taken in the first round. To this day, though, Geno Smith is the only quarterback in this entire draft class to make a Pro Bowl, so yeah, that year's quarterback class was pretty underwhelming, to put it nicely. Mark Sanchez was still with the Jets going into the 2013 season, but after he got injured in the preseason, Geno Smith was immediately handed the reins as the Jets starting quarterback, as it would be the end of the Mark Sanchez era for the Jets. In Geno Smith's rookie year, the Jets were 8-8. You would expect them to be much worse with the 3rd lowest scoring output and giving up the 19th fewest points in the league that year, right? Let's just focus on the offense for now, and for any Jets fans that want to rag on me for hating on the Jets, I don't even hate the Jets. I hate the Eagles and the Cowboys. Let's just make that clear before we go any further. So Geno Smith threw just 12 touchdown passes while throwing 21 interceptions as a rookie. Let's also look at the big picture though. His leading receiver, Jeremy Curley, if you're not a Jets fan, you may not even remember his name, is only 5'9". Of course, size is not end-all be-all, as you can ask guys like Steve Smith or Wes Welker about that, but it does matter. And Typically, you wouldn't want your number one receiver to be 5'9" unless he's a guy like Wes Welker or Steve Smith. Not only that, Jeremy Curley did get injured and missed 4 games. 3 of them were consecutive. In those 4 games, Geno Smith threw 0 touchdown passes and 9 interceptions. Not to make any excuses for Geno Smith, but he was at his worst when he didn't have his best receiver. The Jets' offensive line was also among the worst in the NFL, but their pass blocking was actually barely above league average. The run blocking is what really put the Jets' offensive line towards the bottom of the league. This is only Geno Smith's rookie year though, so no time to give up on him yet. He did set the Jets' single season record for most passing yards by a rookie. The following season, the Jets brought in Eric Decker, who's 6'3", so he's much bigger than Jeremy Curley, and he had 1,288 receiving yards and 11 touchdown catches with Peyton Manning throwing to him on the Broncos in 2013. Pretty big upgrade, right? Eric Decker turned out to be best suited to the number 2, as he did have a drop-off with the Jets, while with the Broncos, he was the second guy behind Demaryius Thomas. He also had a seasoned vet in Peyton Manning, while Geno Smith was only a second-year player. Geno Smith at least cut down on the interceptions, going from 21 to 13, but still only threw 1 more touchdown pass in 2 fewer games than his rookie season. The Jets' offensive line, especially with the pass blocking, also improved significantly, as they were an above-average offensive line. So the Jets should be a lot better, right? No, actually, they regressed significantly as they went 4-12, marking the end of the Rex Ryan era. A noteworthy moment in a bad way for Geno Smith came after a Week 4 loss to the Detroit Lions, where he was seen cussing out Jets fans, and I'll say this as a Giants fan, they have every right to be pissed off, as they've had to endure a lot more bad football than we have. Although the season was pretty terrible for the Jets, Geno Smith did ball out in the final regular season game against the Miami Dolphins, throwing 3 touchdown passes while throwing for 358 yards and had a passer rating of 158. So maybe it wasn't time to give up on him yet, right? Especially after the Jets brought in Brandon Marshall the following offseason, as he was truly a number 1 receiver at the time. However, during training camp in 2015, Geno Smith got punched in the face by his teammate and then Jets defensive end Ike Enemkpali over Geno Smith, allegedly owing him $600, and Geno Smith broke his jaw. Ike Enemkpali would ultimately be released, but it also cost Geno Smith his starting job, as the Jets' new head coach Todd Bowles decided to keep Ryan Fitzpatrick as the Jets starting quarterback after the Jets won their first 2 games of the 2015 season. What people might not know though is that Geno Smith went 8 consecutive practices without throwing an interception before getting punched in the face.
We talking about practice.
Before any Captain Obvious comments come, of course, that's not nearly as meaningful as the actual game, but I do think signs of him being ready to take a leap in his career are there, but it got halted by a bizarre incident, and probably something you'd say is typical to happen with a franchise like the Jets. Again, not throwing any shade, I think that even Jets fans would say this themselves. The Jets were 4-2 by the time Geno Smith finally did play, as he came into the game after Ryan Fitzpatrick injured his thumb, and Geno Smith threw for 265 yards with 2 touchdowns and 1 interception in a 34-20 loss to the then Oakland Raiders, now Las Vegas Raiders. This would ultimately be the one game Geno Smith appeared in 2015, as the Jets decided to stick with Ryan Fitzpatrick for the remainder of that season, and they went 10-6, which marked their first winning season since 2011 and just narrowly missed the playoffs. So the future does not look bright for Geno Smith at all. Ryan Fitzpatrick was Fitzmagic in 2015, well, until the last game of the season, as he threw for 3,905 yards, 31 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions for the whole season. That would allow him to stay the Jets starting quarterback for the following season until Fitzpatrick became Fitztragic, as the Jets went 1-5 to start the season, and in Week 5 against the Cardinals, Geno Smith got another chance, and he got to play 9 snaps in a 28-3 loss. Geno Smith kept his starting job for the following week, only to tear his ACL in a win over the Baltimore Ravens, which ended his tenure with the Jets. It's a weird way to put it, but while Geno Smith certainly did fail with the Jets, was it really his fault? Maybe a little bit, but I'm not so sure I'd say it was entirely his fault, as the Jets have had quarterback development problems for decades, and Geno Smith had injuries. he also had a lackluster supporting cast around him when he was healthy. So now Geno Smith comes to my team for the 2017 season to back up Eli Manning. He was considered an afterthought at this point, and maybe with a healthy Odell Beckham Jr., Geno Smith could have found success since prime OBJ or even Rams OBJ was better than anyone Geno Smith ever threw to on the Jets. That didn't matter though, because OBJ's season was prematurely ended, which was the beginning of his downfall. Geno Smith also wouldn't have been given a good coach to work with anyways, although he has recently thanked Ben McAdoo for giving him an opportunity, which in fact is true, but that was Ben McAdoo being petty by benching Eli over the one thing he got right, which was wanting to trade up for Patrick Mahomes. If that did happen though, Mahomes would have only been able to overcome the bad offensive line, lack of a running game at the time, McAdoo's arrogance, and bad play calling to an extent anyways. Not like either of the next two head coaches were good either, they sucked too, especially Joe Judge. Mahomes would have also only been able to overcome looking at the tape to a certain extent. That was Ben McAdoo before Joe Judge was Mr. We're gonna look at the tape. But back to Geno Smith. This made Geno Smith the Giants' first ever black starting quarterback, which made every NFL team have a black starting quarterback for at least one game. Geno Smith finished the game with 212 passing yards and a touchdown, but his two first half fumbles within the Raiders' 30-yard line stopped him from finishing off some potential scoring drives. This would happen to be the only game Geno Smith ever played for the Giants, as Ben McAdoo was fired after that game and Eli Manning got his starting job back. It was a lost season for the Giants anyways, and that season was the beginning of the 5-year nightmare for the Giants that, thank God, is over. So then Geno Smith would spend a year with the LA Chargers as Phillip Rivers' backup, and he'd play 34 snaps in 5 games for the Chargers before his time was up. Then here we are, he signed with the Seattle Seahawks, and although initially released after losing the backup role behind Russell Wilson to Paxton Lynch, Geno Smith would re-sign only a day later, but he did not see any action in the 2019 season. In 2020, Geno Smith was back for the Seahawks on another 1-year deal and only saw any action at the end of a Week 14 blowout against his former team, the New York Jets. In 2021, Russell Wilson's final year in Seattle, Geno Smith was back on another 1-year deal and he played 4 games and actually looked decent in a very small sample size. Now in 2022, with Russell Wilson gone, this was Geno Smith's time to prove that he is a capable starting quarterback in the NFL. Before that though, 2022 did not start off great for Geno Smith, as he got hit with a DUI driving 96 miles per hour and failed to signal when changing lanes. He also became very argumentative with the police officer that pulled him over. He said he'll work things out, but I don't have any updates on that as of now. After Russell Wilson was traded to the Denver Broncos, Geno Smith had to compete for the starting job with Drew Lock, who was part of the Russell Wilson trade.
This is where the fun begins.
Not only did Geno Smith win the starting job, he proved that he is more than just a starting level quarterback, as he was 4th in touchdown passes and 8th in passing yards while leading the Seahawks that were supposed to be rebuilding to a 9-8 record with the 9th highest scoring offense to the NFL playoffs.
They wrote me off. I ain't right back, though. That's the problem. I ain't right back. Let's go.
Now, this is not to take anything away from Geno Smith at all, but I think that having DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett to throw to, 3 big tight ends in Noah Fant, Will Dissly, and Colby Parkinson to run jumbo sets with, and also having a great rookie running back in Kenneth Walker, as he ran for over 1,000 yards and scored 9 touchdowns in 15 games. Not only did Kenneth Walker give the Seahawks a presence in the running game, the threat of him running also opened up play action opportunities for Geno Smith to thrive in while throwing to DK Metcalf, Tyler Lockett, and his tight ends. At 32 years old, Geno Smith has shown that he still has plenty of mobility to avoid getting hit, as he didn't get the best protection, but it was just better than expected. Geno can sometimes hold on to the ball too long, but to be that hard on him about that for the redemption season that he had, I think that would be nitpicking. The Seahawks offensive line happened to rank near the bottom of the league by the end of the year according to PFF. However, it's really at center and right guard where they really need to improve. When I first wrote this script, The Seahawks offensive line was ranked 14th by PFF ahead of week 15, and they ended up going all the way down to 27th to finish the season, which I'd say makes sense since Geno Smith was sacked 12 times in the last 4 games of the season. Geno Smith was tied with Kirk Cousins as the 3rd most sacked quarterback in the league and was also the 4th most knocked down quarterback, and it's really center and right guard where they need an upgrade at. Their 2 rookie tackles, especially Abraham Lucas, who was a 3rd round pick, have looked very good for them. Although Charles Cross, who was taken with the 9th pick that was part of the Russell Wilson package, may be a work in progress, he has shown a lot of potential to be great during the season, and I think that he's better than his PFF grade would tell us. Even while under pressure though, Geno Smith was able to make some really good reads to make positive plays. I also think that Geno Smith's patience in the pocket has improved, and I think that goes with confidence now that he has guys around him that he can believe in. He always did have the arm strength, and when he was scouted as a prospect, ball location was his issue. Well, it sure wasn't for the Seahawks in his first full year as a starter since 2014. Also in 2013, Geno Smith was 18th in airtime with his passes before they were caught, and 26th in 2014. In 2022, he was all the way up to 5th. Per attempt for guys who've actually played the majority of the season, only Tua Tagovailoa had more air yards per attempt, and Geno Smith was tied with Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts for the next most. Now, if only the Seahawks had a better defense, particularly their run defenses, their pass defense was actually decent, the Seahawks probably would be better than 9-8, but funny how things work. The Seahawks were supposed to rebuild while the Broncos were supposed to compete for the first time since they won the Super Bowl 7 years ago. Instead, the Broncos are the ones who missed the playoffs with a 5-12 record. Speaking of the pass defense, Tariq Woolen was an absolute steal of a 5th round pick. It's safe to say that with draft picks like Charles Cross, Kenneth Walker, Abraham Lucas, and Tariq Woolen, the Seahawks front office deserves a ton of credit for the Cinderella season that they've had for drafting so well. Again, not to take anything away from Geno Smith, I just want to point out more things that prove that this is the first time in his career that he really was put in the right position to succeed. Maybe if Geno Smith was drafted into a better situation, he could have been what he became this year much sooner for all we know, but I think it's safe to say that he was thrown into fire with the Jets and really did have the talent to succeed in the NFL all along. He just needed time to put it together and the right supporting cast. Other than Dak Prescott or Russell Wilson, can you name me another non-first round pick that was a starting quarterback for a team immediately that had success? Thing with Dak Prescott is that he had an elite offensive line from the get-go. Ezekiel Elliott, Dez Bryant, Cole Beasley, and Jason Witten on his team. Unfortunately for him, not for me though, he had Jason Garrett as his head coach, but at least for the Cowboys, the talent was there to overcome a terrible head coach during the regular season. And the Seahawks were just a quarterback away from competing when they drafted Russell Wilson. Geno Smith did not have that kind of talent when he played for the Jets or anything close to it. Yes, I know 2015 was the beginning of the end for Dez because of injuries, but he was still solid in 2016 in the 13 games he played. He was good enough to make the Pro Bowl. I have to really commend Geno for never giving up and seeing things through after a rough first 9 years in the league. He must have learned quite a lot during his time as a backup, having backed up Eli Manning, Phillip Rivers, and Russell Wilson. Sometimes starting out as a backup is what's best for a quarterback, and Phillip Rivers and Eli weren't starters right away. Neither were Tom Brady, Joe Montana, Patrick Mahomes, Aaron Rodgers, Drew Brees. I'm sure you can name more, but you get the point. Do you think Geno Smith's resurgence is sustainable going forward and he can be like a Kurt Warner, Steve Young, or Rich Gannon? Can he be the quarterback that leads the Seahawks back to the Super Bowl going forward, or is he a one-year wonder? Let me know in the comments what you think. For me personally though, I think he's definitely in position to have success going forward too, and not just be a one-year wonder. Both their rookie tackles should improve going forward, and if they just improve at center and right guard, with the receivers and tight ends that Geno Smith has to throw to, and having Kenneth Walker, the sky's the limit for Geno Smith. If the Seahawks improve their run defense too, then the sky is the limit for the team. I also believe this wildcard game is a good experience for Geno Smith and some of the young guys on this team. This team clearly has some things to work on, but if you're a Seahawks fan, I think you should be optimistic going forward. So that is the end of this video. If you did enjoy this video, please consider dropping a like because that helps it reach more people. Please consider subscribing and turning on notifications to support the grind. If you want to follow me on social media, links are down below. If you want to click the videos up above in the end screen, I'd appreciate that as well. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you next time. Peace.